if you give bad data to AI, it just weaponizes it. They run through our process. We see data quality levels in the 30%, 40%. Yesterday was Excel, now it's Claude. It's still a manual work. The first job function that AI has completely transformed is software development. Soon we will have to decide what needs to be totally autonomous and what needs to be supported by AI.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Full Stack GTM podcast. I'm Andy Mowat, joined by Noah Marks, my co-host and co-founder of GTM Council. We have Elio Narciso here today. He is the CEO of Scalestack. Elio, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Noah. Good to be here.
I'm excited for this one. This is an episode in our GTM engineering podcast series where we're deep diving with leaders in both tooling and practitioners around GTM engineering. I've gotten to know Elio over the last couple of years. We use their tooling to do a lot of our agents that go out there and scrape data, pull insights, do a lot of decisioning for us on GTM data so that in our case, we can know with Whispered which candidates are good, which candidates are bad, and know as much as we can about them. I've watched Elio help some of the top companies out there scaling, and I'm excited to talk about it. I think if I were to position it, it's kind of like enterprise data and agents at scale. But Elio, how would you describe what Scalestack does?
Well, super glad to be here, and I value and treasure the relationship that we've been building together. Everything is moving so fast, and so even our own view about our role in the market has been evolving. But I think that the latest and greatest on how we see ourselves is this important infrastructural piece that sits between the data layer and the activation layer. The modern go-to-market stack has for decades lived on there is the data layer that plugs into the activation layer, let's say the CRM, and that's it. But putting data straight from the sources into a CRM or into a gong, into the places where people use that data, has resulted in a lot of problems, with bad data that nobody trusts, data that doesn't evolve with your ICP and needs, etc. And I think we sort of tolerated that status for a long time because, only humans were operating on that data. Now with AI and agents running the show in a lot of roles and in a lot of tasks. And if you imagine how will companies be run, we believe that companies will be run by humans and agents. And so if you give bad data to AI, it just weaponizes it. And so if you want the need for this orchestration middleware layer that unifies the data and then cleans it, enriches, prioritizes it at any scale is becoming more and more important. You need to give good data to agents and to AI in order for them to do the job that they need to do. Otherwise, everything falls apart. And so we see our role as this infrastructural piece that sits in between the data layer and the activation layer that guarantees that the data that is used by humans and agents is good.
So this is the first step in the data being the very first step that a lot of organizations are trying to take. A lot of folks tried to put on AI over the last year and a half and found that it failed, just as you mentioned. And the challenge being is the data, the fidelity of the data. If the very first step and people going out there and building out any sort of either augmented or autonomous agentic motion, can you then just take a Scalestack and overlay the data you have to then enrich it and make it better? or do you need to consolidate it, put it in a data lake, do some cleansing? Like, what are the steps here? Because I think people are focusing on, like, can I use AI now? Do I have to clean the data first? But are you saying that you can take the data you have and iteratively get it better as you go?
The steps for me are that like let's say like a simple example, no? So like you have an AI SDR. I mean, a lot of people are experimenting with that, or like, just an automation on like campaigns, marketing that you want to do. If your data is not in order, if like your CRM is full of like unclean objects, and like contacts and lead and account information is not like what it should be, the results by using AI as like the downstream like layer are gonna be just as like bad at a different scale, much larger scale. So yes, our speech or pitch to the market and to larger companies is that first you need to have like a data layer that you trust. And to do that, data lives in many different places. It's in your CRM, it's in your data lakes, it's the data that you buy, it's the data out there, like, out in the public web that you want to research, is like press releases and job postings that contain a lot of data about your prospects and targets that you want to incorporate and orchestrate. And it wasn't really possible to do this job, this orchestration layer job, before AI, unless you use a lot of humans, because you need like an intelligent layer, because it's not just automation. It's like, okay, I need to orchestrate by automating and combining data. Then I need to have like some intelligence in like validating the data. Okay, I get some data from ZoomInfo. Is that correct? Yes, no. If it's not, like maybe I'll go research some more data on that particular prospect or target company and bring back like different data points that either validate, corroborate like the data that I have from my data source, or add like dimensions and quality to the data. And so we have now delegated to agents that job. And so there are agents that, like, once the data is unified and orchestrated, like, go and validate data, go and validate like additional data points, go and do research and bring back like, higher quality data. And so it wasn't really possible before like the advent of the AI in the form that we now know it for the past like 3-4 years. But now it is possible. And that's what we're working on with customers, to make sure that this like orchestration layer enables them to use AI at the end, like a downstream level.
And Leo, the kind of two-part question. One is like, I think I've been really impressed with your team on, I'll give you a data problem, and you guys use a combination of different data vendors, agents, and then your intuition on all of that to solve that. Can you talk maybe about the process that companies go through to get good data and kind of how you guys do it? And then the second part of the question I'll ask you is the buy versus build, right? Like, why do people use you guys versus build and weave a lot of this stuff together? You and I have had some good discussions around that.
Yeah. On the first part of your question, I think that like really what you have seen in action from Scalestack is that like, we maybe have used like forward deployment engineering without like giving that cool name. But the reality is that like for larger customers, which are companies that we work with, we don't really work with small companies, not because we don't like them, but like is because there are like lots of different options for them. But for larger companies, there is a level of understanding of the business logics that you need to have in order to make the product work. And so we have been essentially offering to customers this like bridge by forward deployment engineers, so that like we really understand the business logics. Because if you then translate those business logic into agents and agent missions and orchestration, the results are much better. And also, if you keep adjusting those like logics, which will change. I mean, companies change constantly, right? So like ICP get expanded, the definition of things changes. And so you want to make sure that that's constantly reflected. Um, I think that that's been like also a very good exercise for us to really absorb and then decide, absorb what's important for customers and decide what things make it into the product, and then what things should be like done by solution engineers or architects. And so we have a product team that builds the platform, and then there is also a product solution team in between, like the product team and the go-to-market team that creates that bridge. And to take it a step forward, we see the evolution of the platform as a lot of APIs, right? So a Scalestack really is like a bunch of APIs. Some are like agents, some are like data, some are software modules, but they are all like created and managed eventually by a reasoning agent. And so it's part of like the investments over the next few months that we have already started is really to sophisticate this reasoning agent that you can talk to explain your business logic, and the agent who is knowledgeable about like the hundreds of APIs that compose the Scalestack platform will compose a very sophisticated and very technical agentic workflow for you to like satisfy your business logic and requirements. And so essentially we are teaching an agent the work that our solution architect or that our product solution people have been doing for customers.
You can go in and wire up like 4 data sources, and now you can have AI kind of pick between the data sources. We did another one, Noah led one on agentic SDR, and I think that the answer of like, yes, you can do it in-house, but here are all the things you're going to have to figure out. What are those things that you would have to figure out and do if you tried to do what Scalestack does in-house?
A very simple example that I always bring to people is that like every data source has like different rate limits, and data sources will behave in many different forms if you run go to market at scale. And so that means that you have to have like workflows that run continuously for hundreds or thousands of hours. And so they will need to just like learn how to handle different rate limits across several data sources. And they will need to not to break if like one data source stops and then restarts later. And so the orchestrator that we built, I think, is great for larger customers because all these things happen in real life. And so you need to know how to handle them. And then the other element that I think about it's great about our orchestrator is that it offers governance. And so auditability. Larger teams need to know what's going on and what happened. If they want to go back and see like, hey, what were like the logics and the maybe the reasoning that the agents have like used to perform certain tasks or missions. And so the ability to like have management of rate limits across many data sources and like the ability to stop and restart without creating a mess at the end, or like the ability to audit what has happened and what will happen and check the reasoning and maybe modify them if like needed, are all like components that are very important for like enterprise grade governance. And then let's not forget that there is like a security aspect to all of this. That like, I mean, everybody's now like sending data to LLMs, and in a year or two, we'll learn like, hey, well, actually, you cannot send that data to an LLM, right? And so there will need to be like security constraints and governance around that, and those are like already there in Scalestack. So that's how we see the build versus buy. Going back to your original question, that we ourselves like use Claude and Clay and all of that for individual experimentation, but at some point you need to decide, number one, if we keep doing repetitive stuff manually, I mean, maybe yesterday was Excel, now it's Claude, it's still a manual work. And so if I always do manual work that is repetitive, maybe I should ask myself, can I automate or make this work autonomous so that I can do better things? And two is like the question about the governance. If like you have like 100 reps and they're all like playing with the ICP, maybe you end up with like 20, 30 different versions of the ICP, and sort of like, maybe we should not be doing that. Like, we should have a consistent definition across like the company, especially a larger scale, for what is the ICP and how do you prioritize your targets? And do we have standards for like what the pre-call research should be that is being adopted at the org level? And so the build versus buy for us, the way we see it in customers, I mean, they are like, I love customers. It's like, I learn so much from them. They are telling us, I love experimenting, but then at some point I need to decide, like, when to bring governance in, when to bring like standardization. And I'm looking for solutions for that. And we listen, and that's how we operate. Please do experiment with Claude or Cursor or like, Clay. But then when it's time to standardize, govern, and maybe hopefully make some of the tasks autonomous, bring them to Scalestack.
Can you provide a couple examples of what are some of the top challenges that your customers are bringing to you that you guys are solving? I think that would be helpful to kind of quantify what's some of the realm that you're working in.
I would say like the top four use cases for us are systemic level data quality. And so can you bring like our CRM or like data lake hygiene, which is an unsexy way of saying like your data needs to be ready for AI, so for humans and for AI to be used. And so like guaranteeing like that the data quality keeps increasing and gets to a level where the trust that people have in that data in the system is much higher. And
It
we
seems like
have
that's kind of a step one though too, right? It seemed to me like for anybody that's doing even any of these other examples you're going to provide, that seems to be, let's put this in place to and then start moving forward. It seems very foundational to me.
it's super foundational, but like every time that we diagnose like that for like prospects, and when they like they run through our process, we see like data quality levels in the
Oh yeah,
30%, 40%.
that's even good. No, I'm just saying I think it's foundational, meaning that it's the starter. Like you have to do this, and this is probably, you could probably just have a business just doing that layer because it's so critical. So that's generally the first layer that people will get.
Yeah.
You put Scalestack on, cleanse your data, get to a better state, and then they start getting to more
Yeah,
action.
we
Okay.
see companies that have like offshore teams. I mean, I'm talking about like larger companies. No, so companies that have offshore teams in India or the Philippines to do this. No, and they've done this for years because like they were like trying to find a solution, and still is not good. And so my co-founder always get upset. I agree with you. You could build like a company just on this. Like my co-founder gets upset with me. Oh, like you talk about CRM hygiene too much. And like, it doesn't sound strategic. I think in the age of AI, it's absolutely strategic, because like what
Yeah.
AI will do with that data, you don't know. And so that's number one. Anything related to account prioritization. We see so many people struggling with basic stuff about like, hey, I need to calculate time in our like entire like account list, right? And time derives from like data points, right, that I need to know about my prospects or customers in order to calculate the addressable market in that account, in a territory map for a rep, etc. Or to solve like for you know account attribution to reps. No, so like, do we have the data that we need in order to like give and route the account to the right rep? And so you need to solve for like parent-child, and you need to solve for like location, or for segments, or for like lots. And this is all data. This goes back always to the data. But so account prioritization is a second big use case for us. Another use case is ICP expansion. We have a lot we support like larger customers, and so a lot of them, you're not big if you're not operating in multiple ICPs and in multiple segments, and you constantly try to explore new segments. And so ICP discovery and expansion is a growing use case for us. There is a big legal AI firm that we help, and as they expanded from targeting only law firms to companies that have a lot of lawyers in their team, we help them with that ICP expansion. And then the last one is anything related to leads and prospects and prioritization of that flow of signups and inbound leads. We have seen so many companies that, for instance, have a free trial in their product. And when you offer a free trial in your product, and you are large, typically you have a lot of unclean signups and leads, people that maybe register with their personal email, and then you don't know who they are, and marketing teams and product teams are lost in translation in is this a current customer, maybe a new developer at an existing customer. I'd like to know that. And so de-anonymizing those signups and leads is a huge use case for us, or reverse de-anonymization. And so learning what are the personal profiles associated with the business contact, so that then you can do maybe ABM and other campaigns on that. And then maybe to close it, something that is growing for us is embeddings. We are embedding the Scalestack platform into other people's products, and Typeform is a fantastic example in this. We've had a partnership now in place for almost a year, and it's growing. And so we have embedded Scalestack into one of their product, Typeform for Growth, so that hundreds of thousands of forms that Typeform process for their customers get autonomously enriched by Scalestack. And so we have an agentic workload that gets the form and autonomously adds a lot of attributes that are interesting for Typeform customers, and then sends them back those insights. So I would say these 5 are the biggest use cases for us right now.
Those are awesome. I love the detail. Now this part of the ebook we're writing around this, the ability to kind of help people understand what are practical applications. You did a great job of articulating that. I guess if I look at it, and we just published something on our Substack around kind of how do you get AI mature, right? And I think first is you got to have the right core systems, then you got to have the right data, which you just nailed, and then the next one is semantic layer. So I'd love to know how do you integrate into all these systems, right? Are there any interesting things if you have a data and agents and everything like that? Is it as simple as just plug in Salesforce or plug into this or plug into the data warehouse? And then maybe as part of that also, where are you seeing, are people using data warehouse increasingly as source of truth, CRM and map as source of truth? And how do you think about best practices with integrations?
Yeah, integrations are a key component for us. We develop an SDK, and it's very easy to build a new integration. I remember when we started working together, we didn't have an Airtable integration, and it was very easy to build it on top of an SDK. It takes maybe 24 hours now to spin up a new integration. We have hundreds available, but we keep adding them. And this is important. And from the very beginning, again, we see the platform as really a bunch of APIs. And so the ability to quickly being able to build a new integration is of key importance for us. And so we have integrations with lots of different data sources and tools and systems. And that's going to continue to be a core focus for us. And that's why we were also excited to, Zapier invested in our latest fundraising round, and we're very proud of that because, probably they are the king of APIs and integrations. And so that will continue to be a very important focus for us. In terms of like the source of truth, I think that that's a very interesting topic and conversation. We do see that increasingly people are asking us to put stuff into their Snowflake and Databricks, and that is sort of preference of start using that as like the main layer where like the system of record. CRMs, I mean Salesforce, basically for our customers, are still very important. But I do see customers asking themselves, like, what exactly am I doing on Salesforce? Like, because a lot of the things that they do are like, they're paying for Salesforce, which is not cheap. And then like lots of things, lots of systems of actions happen elsewhere.
Well, it's also like if you think about it, we used to have a scenario where we would almost hack a waterfall in Salesforce, right? You would have the account employees from ZimInfo, the account employees from Clearbit, the account employees from like three different sources, and you'd have the rep one, then you'd have a little formula in Salesforce that would do all that. And so I think part of like building this agentic data layer is you're ripping out it allows you to rip out complexity from Salesforce. And that's part one. And then part two is, do you even need Salesforce to be the source of truth anymore? Which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been like lots of interesting development on the Salesforce side over the past like few months, even last week with the announcements of the headless Salesforce. I do think that they are starting to recognize that the ecosystem that they have is so big that I think it prevents them to like work at a certain speed. But I admire the company, and I think that like they have taught us a lot over the last 20 years. But at the same time, I do think the customers are like sort of using it as like a data cloud. And then a lot of things are happening, before and after outside of Salesforce. Um, and so, yeah, it's an interesting discussion. We'll see how this all evolves and how they will evolve and adapt. Because to me, if you start to have lots of systems of action elsewhere, in the end, like the sum of the system of actions becomes the system of record. And so, like, that's what Salesforce was, as you pointed out, 5, 10 years ago. But now that it's, a lot more questionable, I would say.
One thing I've learned, and Ellie, I'd be curious on this, is it used to be you would always structure fields in your CRM, right? You would want a defined pick list. But with AI, and working with your team have been increasingly removing the pick list values and moving to unstructured data more
Yeah.
and more. I'm curious how you think about like structured fields versus unstructured fields.
That's good.
I think, for instance, like one thing that we are doing with customers that it's exciting for them and for us is like confidence score about the data. Like there is, earlier, like smile when I said guaranteed quality of your data, and I can see why. And it's not that like there is like a bible of the truth out there, especially for sales and marketing. Like stuff changes constantly about people, companies, their investors. So like there is always a level of approximation, but as long as you keep like fixing and improving this basic like quality, so that you don't have invalid, you don't have duplicates, etc. Plus you start like adding depth to the data, and if you add like the confidence that you have in data points that are important to you, there is value to that in itself. So like what we have started doing for many of our customers is that, especially for the key attributes that they care about, hey, like this is the data point that I'm giving you. I don't know, simple example, revenues, right? So the revenues across all of your like 100,000 accounts in your CRM. This is the revenue that I collected about that company. And like, green or like, X score means that like I'm very confident about this data because like I found like 3 data sources plus my own research, and there was a press release that confirmed this data point. For this, I'm like, averagely confident, and these need still like, some research and assessment, and maybe like, some inputs from, calls that you have with this prospect will help like improve the data. And just that increases trust in the data, because at the end of the day, like, we need to trust the data. It may not be like perfect 100% of the time, but like, if I can trust it that most of the time like it works, then I can use it. And so part of this is also that, especially for like unstructured data, we give like we ask the agent to produce the reasoning. How did you get there? What were the steps and the data sources that you used to get to this data point? And this is a great, going back to the auditing capabilities, a great feature of the platform, like show the reasoning. And the reasoning in itself becomes like an ability to assess the data, to increase the confidence, and to keep learning on what can we do better. And so these are like a couple of examples that I wanted to share, because like it has provided a lot of value to our customers.
I love that. I've started to play around with it. I mean, maybe go back to the other question, which was the structured versus unstructured, right? For example, with you guys, I used to have Scalestack figure out what the function of the employee was. Now I'm starting to realize when I put that function into the system, it's limited by the function list that I have. And now the idea, which is, no, we can just give them the full like history of work and let our agent on the other side figure that out. Like, I'm curious, how do you guys, like, what's your opinion on the future? I guess what I'm realizing is when I'm filtering and searching in the old way, structured fields matter a lot. Now, when I'm using an AI model to search my data, I'm actually moving almost every one of my fields within Whispered to unstructured data. And so I'm curious, are you seeing that trend for other people, right? Which is the getting of the data, the accuracy, the confidence score, massively valuable. The structuring of it maybe less so. I'm curious how you think about that.
First off, I do think that the majority of data in especially enterprise companies is unstructured data. I mean, like an email, right? An email address is unstructured data for us. And so, like, it is not a number, right? That you can, like, you can analyze and assess, but like it's unstructured data on which you have to give, like, a certain confidence score. And the way we do that is by even decomposing the email address. And so, like, is the URL like done in a such way, or like, the first part of the email address? So, majority of data that we see at companies is unstructured.
Mhm.
And like that's why I brought up in that context like the confidence score, because like structured data, something that you can put in a database, in a spreadsheets with a fixed schema, and it's easy to analyze and validate, is like simpler, and maybe we should use automation. While like unstructured data, we may want to add like an intelligent layer to analyze it before like judging if the data is good is not or not. And that's the key change of before versus after. Um, so to me, like when I think about structured versus unstructured, is like, the majority of the data we see is unstructured, and having the agentic layer assess and evaluate and give confidence score and show the reasoning helps us deliver higher quality to that unstructured data. Does it make sense?
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Last question before I get to know. Everyone's talking about the semantic layer on top of your data, right? So if you think about, and this may be beyond you guys, because if I think about like what is the definition of gross revenue retention in my business, that is something I need to define on top of all of my data fields. I guess you guys are probably dealing more with like certain types of data, but do you think at all about layering that semantic layer on top of that data as well too? So it's like the definitions of fields and how to use things so that AI can consume it better.
I think that we are probably more focused for now on like, foundational element. I think that, like that component of like, how do you then use the data to like, generate insights or generate additional things on top. We see it more as like a downstream sort of activation layer of the data. And we think that, I mean, like, let's think about Glean. Many people ask me, oh, do you compete with Glean? And the answer is like, no. I can see why there can be confusion, but like at the end of the day, Glean is a fantastic platform to access existing data that you have and like, add like a semantic layer so that you can research it or maybe abstract it. But if the foundational layer, if the data that Glean gets data from is wrong, the results will be wrong, guaranteed. And so I think that for now, we're very much focused on that foundational data problem, and assume that like platform that do the activation and that abstract the data do their job, and so we're not really yet touching that. Although in the input layer, so when we explain to the reasoning agent what to do, we do the reverse process. We explain the business logic so that you can apply the business logic to the foundational data problem. I don't know if I'm
I
clear in what I'm saying.
that made perfect sense. I loved it. Yes, that is something that people have. You think deeper about the data layer than anybody I've seen, and it's really neat.
This has been so good because you're talking to a couple, Ilio, talking to a couple folks that have been doing this for like 15 years, and and even like a pioneer in this space, and you got an aha moment around the structured versus unstructured data, and I want to call that out because we're having questions, not that we're the be all end all experts, but like we've been thinking about this for 24/7 for many decades now, and there's still things like the best practices of what we thought are changing. And you mentioned earlier this concept. I know you've been helping Andy out on that kind of that forward deployed engineer concept, and we actually just posted an article about it last night, actually, which is you have this expertise around not only what the solution can do, but the value proposition behind it and that angle. And you're spending 24/7 thinking about that. So you're that expert. And the idea that most of the companies out there aren't going to have that intuition to say, oh, I don't need structured data or labels anymore in CRM. I can actually just use that unstructured. That sort of understanding and education is going to be very difficult, but it's extremely important because that's a huge value proposition that you're offering, going at that structural level of data. I guess the question behind it, there's a call out there that like this is really important, but the element is I love the concept of that forward deployed person coming in, helping, instructing, helping work with your customers, because we don't know what we don't know. And of all the things that are happening out there, there is a lot of noise around certain technologies looking like they're overlapping, but this is fundamental. And I think this is a key element of like how you get this sort of message out there and how you work with companies and ops teams and everyone else to start establishing like this is really what you can do and this is how you think about your business differently.
Well, thank you for that. And I think so. First off, like I don't know if you two remember, but like at the very beginning of my like development of Scalestack, some investors pointed me to both of you separately, and this was probably 3.5 years ago. I had just left AWS and I was building Scalestack, and you guys gave me like so many insights back then. You guys were very tough with me, and I really am thankful for that. In the sense that like, oh, like yes, good job, you started the company, but like let me tell you what like you have to do if you want to be really successful. And so I I think I agree with what you're saying in the sense that like you've been thinking about this for a very long time. I just think that until now we didn't have the technology to do it. So that's what's really changed. That like you cannot do what we do just with automation. You need that like intelligent layer on top of it. But at the same time, the learning over the last like couple of years working with larger customers is that especially at scale, deciding to do everything with AI is wrong because for instance, like cost will skyrocket. I mean, you don't need to consume tokens for like things that you should be doing with automation, and so AI is very expensive right now. And so the ability to decide when you should do just simple automation and when instead you should deploy like agentic capability, like the intelligent layer, is part of what we support our customers with. Because by doing that, you can scale. Because a component of like the scaling is not just that like, oh, the platform is robust and can like support like systemic size, like hundreds of thousands of objects in my CRM or data lake or millions of leads, but it's also, can you do that cost efficiently, you know? And so deciding when to use AI versus automation is also very important.
I mean, this is a big reason why we started the podcast and why, 9 years ago we started the GTM councils, because this like ongoing learning about what's happening, what the possibilities are is massive. On that note, thinking about over the next 12 months, I mean, the last 12 months have been incredible. The next 12 months, what do you see as kind of that next step, next evolution? How do you view this world in a year from now?
Um, I don't know. I think that like the speed of change is like incredible. Like not even like the last 3, 6 months, the speed of change has been like accelerating. And so I think that this is the key difference of this like um new technology revolution we're living. I mean, I started my career in the early 2000s when, in Europe, I'm originally from Italy, and where, mobile was everything. No, and so we had like great companies in Europe for the first time, like Nokia, Ericsson, because we were like a little bit ahead of the game. And so mobile was like a first revolution that I was lucky to see. And then like after that, of course, like cloud, and now AI. I think what's different this time is the speed. Like you see like large companies that are like struggling to adapt. I mean, I used to be at AWS, like king of cloud. AI arrives and they are like completely behind, despite like years of investment in like AI and machine learning. And so this to say that like the speed is pretty crazy to observe. Our view is that soon we will have to decide what needs to be totally autonomous and what needs to be supported by AI, right? And our mission, I mean, when we started Scalestack, AI was there, but like, I don't think that we had seen it exactly the way it has transformed now. This was like, 4 years ago. But the mission of the company was, we want machines to do repetitive, boring work that people don't want to do. So that was the mission of the company. Yeah, that at that time and today, in between, the AI revolution happened, and I think our mission is still the same. There are certain things that I don't think humans should do, and there are certain things that we think humans should do. And so like provide context and provide strategy and all of that stuff. But I think like what soon people and companies will have to choose is like, what do we trust that AI can do autonomously versus like, still monitored and, controlled and governed by people.
Maybe you'll
And
be the confidence score on all data on the internet. That's a fun
hopefully
one.
we have big plans, so we'll see.
We did two, maybe two kind of wrapping up questions. One is, you work with a lot of rock star teams out there, bigger companies that are doing things well. What are some of the skill sets you think are needed to be a great person that works with you guys, get the most out of you, and also just like be a great GTM engineer? Like what does that skill set require? And then you also have hired and built a lot of these like effectively GTM engineers in your company as well too. So what's the skill set you're looking for to hire for these people when you know you're interacting with somebody that really knows their stuff?
So I think, I don't know, I'm just thinking of this. So last night we had here in New York a fantastic dinner co-hosted by Scalestack and Zapier to sort of celebrate, the fact that we have started working together, that they are like they've invested in Scalestack as well. And there were like some of our customers like Astronomer and MongoDB and others. I think a trait across a lot of our customers and partners, and I have Wade, the CEO and founder of Zapier, in front of my eyes now. Is like so humble and recognizing that, like, yes, we, maybe we have built big companies and like we're doing well and we're working, like, but very humble in that, like, there are many things that we still need to learn and like, and that I don't know everything, and I'm willing and curious to learn some more. And so I think that if I look at our customers, this is a common human traits across many teams. We work with really successful companies that have raised like hundreds of millions, have billion-dollar valuations, or they are publicly traded companies. Invariably, they are like very humble teams. They are willing to learn. They're willing to, like, and curious to discover more, and they don't think they have all the answers. And instead, it seems that we don't close companies where, like, oh, like, I've done this and that, I know everything. And then, then probably they're not going to be curious enough to explore the new world. So this is a common theme, human theme, that I see across all these like very big successful companies that we work with. In terms of the evolution of the go-to-market engineer, I think that Clay has done a fantastic job at creating and inventing this term, and so kudos to them. I'm Italian, so like branding and marketing is very important to me. At the same time, if I look at what is the first job function that AI has completely transformed, is like software development. We have developers in our team. We keep hiring more, and consistently everybody's telling me, I don't write code anymore. So whatever was my job, like 2-3 years ago or up until then, which was like spending time manually writing code all day long, is not that the job anymore. The job is to manage agents to write that code and to check and provide context and strategy and different ideas and audit, etc. And so the fact that now in go-to-market, which is, yes, agree, inherently a very inefficient process because it involves a lot of humans, everywhere. And so it's different than like coding. The fact that now we are like saying, okay, you need to have a go-to-market engineer, it seems sort of like passé almost, and like, not very modern. And so I do agree that revenue teams are becoming more technical across the board, not just go-to-market engineers. I think, the reps now have to, like, maybe build artifacts on Claude to do like some, experimentation. But I think that like we should be looking at software development as an inspiration, which is, can I, instead of manually go-to-market engineer stuff, can I delegate this to agents so that they do that repetitive form of my work that probably I should not be doing so much that developers are not writing code anymore? So that's sort of my perspective. Is maybe not the most popular, but it is what we are seeing.
I think it is brilliant. Maybe because we could probably talk for another hour on this stuff, or months, and I'm excited to watch just how deeply you thought about data is so inspiring. So thank you, Elio, for the time today.
Thank you. It was
Yeah,
fun.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day, everybody.